Hi, I'm Amanda Rutland with the Office of Public Relations. Like many of you, I'm working remotely, and as such, I worry about how to keep my family safe. So I have taken the time to make some masks, and I'm going to teach you how to make them too. This is the outside pattern, or the outside fabric, and the inside fabric. As you can tell, they're slightly different sizes. So the first step we're going to take is to sew the inside lining. So what you'll need to do is you'll need to take your two liner pieces and put them right sides together. So what you're going to see is the back of the fabric. And we're going to line them up corner to corner from the middle seam. So that's the curved portion. I'm sewing this, I think the pattern calls for a 1/4 inch seam allowance, but I'm sewing it a little bit smaller than that. I'm sewing between a 1/4 and an 1/8 inch. Another thing I've found when making these masks is you might want to measure and make sure the length is adequate for your face. So you can do that by taking a tape measure down this and then measuring the distance on your face. If so, what I did in the others is I wound up adding a couple inches to some of the masks I've made. So what you're gonna do is you're just gonna follow the curve. You don't have to go quick. I actually recommend you go kind of slow. So you make sure that it stays together. So I'm going to set the inner lining to the side, and we're going to do the same thing to the outside pieces. So making sure these are right sides together. We line them up from the point. It looks like our seam is good. There's no spots we've missed. Now from here, there are a couple things we need to do before we can put the pieces together. So we're creating vents about every 1/2 to 3/4 inch. I'm just eyeballing it, doesn't have to be perfect. When you're cutting close, make sure to get up to your seam, but don't cut into it. What this does is when we sew it together, it allows the curve not to bunch. So that way it'll lay flat across your face. And we'll do this to both sides of the mask. So we're going to continue with the same spacing on the outside portion, just ever so slightly. Now, on to our next step, which will be ironing. For our next step, we're going to turn these right side out and press this. This will help with our top stitch. So, we're going to flip it this way, fold it on itself, make sure everything is all the way out, and we'll just press it here for a brief moment. We'll do the same to both the inside and the outside. So again, we turn it right side out and fold it down for the press. So now, after we have our inner seam pressed, we're going to do a top stitch. And that is going to secure this inner seam flap to one side, which is going to make a bigger difference in our construction and keeping it stiff. So making sure my seam is to the correct side. I'm just going to sew in a straight line, close, to this inner seam. And to get completely down in the seam, you may have to bend it up a little bit. This is our finished top seam. You can see it's very close to the inner seam, and this is where it's secured, that stitching on the back. So now we're going to do the same to the inner lining. So I folded the seam to the right side of the outside, so I'm going to fold the extra material to the left this time. So I'm going to get everything lined up, make sure my threads are long enough. It's easier to see on our inner lining because the fabric is darker right where that top stitch is. So for the inner lining, what we're going to do now is we're going to fold the edges back and stitch them, so that way we get a nice finished edge on the outside. I'm not going to press it. You can if you'd like to, but I'm not. Now I'm going to repeat the same thing on the other side. Finally, we're ready to join our inside and outside layers. So you will measure them up to the pointy nose piece at the center, and you'll just stitch right across the top. Now, I am not pinning this because I don't want to poke holes in it. If you'd like to pin it and you're not worried about holes, that's up to you. So when I get to the top of the nose piece, I go ahead and lift the foot and rotate the fabric to the top, and I've sewn one complete side. I'm going to lift my presser foot and rotate the fabric slightly so that everything flows really well and our seams are nice and straight. We're going to do the same thing for the bottom seam. I'm going to flip it on this side so it's a little easier to see. Make sure that's good and lined up. I backstitch on the joining seams just for a little added stability. And as you'll notice, there's that little bit of pocket there that it's starting to form, and that's what we want. We're getting close. Let's take it back, and we're going to turn it right side out and press it. This is the elastic I'm going to use. It's actually probably a little bit wider than what is ideal, but this is what I have on hand. So if you have a safety pin, you can poke the safety pin through the end to help you run it through the casing, the seam casing. I don't have a safety pin on hand, so I'm going to fold it in half and just kind of run it through with my hand. So I use this pair of tweezers to help me pull it through. So everyone, I don't have a set guidance for how long to make each side. One thing I do know is that it helps to consider who you're making it for. As you know, some people's heads are bigger than others. I made one for my brother and it was way too small. So I recommend that you're in total using at least 24 inches for a teen to an adult. So as such, I'm going to go ahead and measure this a little bit. I'm just gonna kind of eyeball it. I know that this is longer than 12 inches, so I'm just gonna double it, as I'd like to have a little bit extra. And from here, I'm going to go ahead and run this same piece of elastic down the other seam. So I have my elastic threaded through each seam. It comes through the bottom, and then I have these flaps here up the top. What I like to do before I fit anything is just to make a knot in it and just try it that way, because I want to ensure that it fits. So that's pretty much it. I'm going to adjust the elastic a little bit more to take it up so it fits a little bit tighter for me. What I've done, there are several variations of the same mask. One variation that I had made earlier. This variation has the nose piece. The one I made today does not. This is the pocket version, and I like the pocket version because it allows me to add a filter media. Right now I've been using disposable shop towels to help for an added protection. So far there is no scientific results behind that, but it is a tighter weave than the fabric itself. So we'll put a link up to the tutorial, and there are a lot of other tutorials out there. So I hope this inspires you to feel that you can tackle homemade PPE to keep your family safe. Thank you and take care.